Leave now, or security will remove you. The words sliced through the crystal-lit showroom of Luminaire Beverly Hills like a blade through silk. Elena Cross stood motionless, her dark eyes steady on the woman who'd just labeled her a threat. Around them, diamond necklaces glittered under soft lights. Shoppers froze mid-breath. Phones rose like periscopes. The manager's manicured finger pointed toward the door with theatrical certainty, as if casting out an intruder from sacred ground. But Elena didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She simply reached into her modest leather bag and pulled out her phone. Her voice, when it came, was softer than a whisper and more dangerous than a shout. "Before you call security, let me make my call." In that moment, beneath the chandeliers of the most exclusive jewelry store on Rodeo Drive, a reckoning began. One that would shatter assumptions, expose hidden rot, and prove that power doesn't always announce itself with diamonds. We invite you to follow this story to the very end. Like this video and comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The morning air on Rodeo Drive carried the scent of wealth. Leather interiors, fresh espresso, imported perfume. Sunlight poured down the boulevard like liquid gold, pooling in storefront windows where price tags existed only upon request. This was Beverly Hills at its most unapologetic, where excess wasn't a sin, but a sacrament. Elena Cross walked slowly along the pristine sidewalk, her low heels clicking a steady rhythm against marble white concrete. She wore a navy blazer over a cream blouse, simple black slacks, and carried a worn leather bag that had seen better years. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. No jewelry adorned her neck or wrists. Nothing about her screamed for attention. She paused outside Luminaire Beverly Hills. The building rose 3 stories, its facade a masterpiece of glass and brushed platinum. The name was etched in elegant script above towering doors. Luminaire. Through the windows, Elena could see the familiar glow, the soft amber lighting she'd personally designed to make diamonds look like captured starlight. Display cases stood like altars. Velvet cushions cradled treasures worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. She'd built this, every inch of it. But today, she wasn't here as the founder. She was here as a test. Elena pushed open the door. A gentle chime announced her arrival. Cool, perfumed air washed over her. The showroom stretched before her in curated perfection, gleaming cases arranged in geometric harmony, plush seating areas in dove gray, and staff members positioned like sentries throughout the space. A blonde woman near the entrance glanced up from her tablet. Her eyes swept over Elena in less than a second. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good morning," the woman said, her tone pleasant but measured. "Are you looking for something specific today?" Elena offered a polite nod. "Just browsing, thank you." The woman's smile tightened imperceptibly. "Of course. Let me know if you need assistance." There was no offer of champagne, no invitation to sit, no warm welcome. Elena moved deeper into the store. She passed a display case showcasing emerald-cut diamond rings. The stones were flawless, each one selected according to the strict standards she'd established 15 years ago when she'd launched Luminaire, with nothing but a loan, a vision, and a relentless belief that luxury could be ethical. A young man stood near the sapphire collection, his hands folded behind his back. He was tall, black, early 20s, with nervous eyes and a name tag that read Marcus. When Elena approached, he straightened immediately. "Good morning, ma'am," Marcus said, his voice careful and respectful. "Can I show you anything from this collection?" Elena smiled gently. "These are beautiful. How long have you worked here?" 3 months, Marcus said, pride flickering across his face. "It's an honor. Luminaire has an incredible reputation." "What do you love most about working here?" Marcus hesitated, as if the question surprised him. "The craftsmanship," he said finally. "Every piece tells a story, and the customers, most of them, they really appreciate that. Most of them." Elena noted the qualifier. Before she could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Marcus, I need you at the back counter." Elena turned. A woman approached with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. She was in her early 40s, platinum blonde hair, styled in a severe bob, wearing a designer suit that cost more than Marcus probably made in 2 months. Her name tag read Diane Mercer, store manager. Marcus nodded quickly. "Yes, Ms. Mercer." He hurried away. Diane's gaze settled on Elena with the coldness of a jeweler appraising a stone and finding it worthless. "Is there something I can help you find?" Diane asked. Her tone suggested she doubted it. Elena met her eyes evenly. "I'm just looking." "We have some lovely pieces in our accessible collection," Diane said, gesturing toward a smaller case near the back. Sterling silver, semi-precious stones, more budget-friendly options. The condescension was barely veiled. Elena didn't react. "I'll keep that in mind." Diane's smile was thin. "Of course, just so you're aware, all our pieces require verified purchase intent before try-ons. Store policy." Elena nodded slowly. "Interesting policy." "Security reasons," Diane said smoothly. "I'm sure you understand." At that moment, the front door chimed again. A white woman in her 50s swept in. Designer sunglasses perched on her head, a small dog tucked under one arm. She wore a fur-trimmed coat despite the California warmth and dripped with jewelry, rings on every finger, a diamond tennis bracelet, pearl earrings. Diane's entire demeanor transformed. "Mrs. Harrington," Diane called out, her voice suddenly warm and bright. "What a delight to see you again." She rushed toward the woman, arms extended as if greeting royalty. "Diane, darling," Mrs. Harrington said, air-kissing both cheeks. "I'm looking for something special. Anniversary gift for Richard. 30 years. "How wonderful! Congratulations," Diane gushed. "Please come sit. Let me bring you champagne." Within seconds, Mrs. Harrington was seated on a velvet sofa, a crystal flute in hand, while Diane personally retrieved a tray of rings from the most exclusive collection. Elena watched from across the room. No one had offered her a seat. No one had offered her champagne. No one had treated her like she belonged. She moved quietly along the perimeter of the showroom, observing. A white couple in their 30s entered next. They were dressed casually, jeans, sneakers, simple jackets. But the moment they mentioned looking for an engagement ring, they were welcomed like honored guests. The female associate guiding them was all smiles, patience, and enthusiasm. Elena paused near a display of tennis bracelets. She leaned in, studying the craftsmanship. The diamonds were set in platinum, each stone perfectly matched for color and clarity. She'd worked with the designer who'd created this line. She knew the carat weight, the origin of the stones, the profit margin. "Can I help you?" Elena turned. A young woman stood nearby, blonde, early 20s, her expression polite but distant. Her name tag read Jessica. "These are stunning," Elena said. "How much is this one?" Jessica glanced at the bracelet Elena indicated. "That's $65,000. No elaboration, no invitation to try it on. Just the price, delivered like a gentle warning." "May I see it?" Elena asked. Jessica hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward Diane, who was still fawning over Mrs. Harrington across the room. "I'll need to check with my manager first." Elena raised an eyebrow. "To show me a bracelet?" "Store policy," Jessica said, echoing Diane's earlier words. "For high-value items." "I see." Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, it's just, we have protocols." Elena nodded slowly. "Of course." Jessica walked away, her relief palpable. Elena remained where she was. She didn't show frustration, didn't raise her voice, didn't demand to speak to anyone. She simply observed, her expression calm, her eyes taking in everything. Across the room, Mrs. Harrington was trying on a ring. Diane held a mirror, angling it so the diamonds caught the light. "Exquisite," Diane cooed. "Richard will be speechless." The casual couple was being guided to a private seating area. The associate brought them water and a selection of ring styles to browse. Meanwhile, Elena stood alone. Marcus passed by carrying a velvet tray. His eyes met Elena's for a brief moment. There was something there. Recognition, perhaps. Not of who she was, but of what was happening. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he kept walking. Elena turned her attention to another case, one displaying vintage-inspired necklaces. She studied a piece featuring a ruby surrounded by tiny diamonds. The design was bold, dramatic, timeless. "That's a beautiful choice." Elena looked up. Marcus had returned, standing a respectful distance away. "It is," Elena agreed. "The ruby is ethically sourced from Mozambique. Marcus said, his voice gaining confidence. The designer worked for 6 months on this piece. It's one of a kind. Elena smiled. You know your inventory. Marcus's face brightened. I try. I think every piece deserves to be understood, not just sold. That's a good philosophy. Marcus hesitated, then leaned in slightly. Would you like me to... Marcus, Diane's voice cracked like a whip. She strode toward them, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Her expression was tight with irritation. I thought I asked you to handle the back counter, Diane said. I finished, Miss Mercer. I was just assisting a customer who hasn't indicated purchase intent, Diane finished. We've discussed this. Don't waste time on browsers. The words hung in the air like poison. Marcus's face flushed. I'm sorry, I just thought... Return to your station, Diane said, her voice brooking no argument. Marcus glanced at Elena, his eyes full of quiet apology, then walked away. Diane turned to Elena, her smile cold and sharp. I apologize for the confusion. As I mentioned earlier, we have some lovely pieces in our accessible collection. Elena met her gaze without blinking. I'm quite comfortable where I am. Diane's smile didn't waver, but something hardened behind her eyes. Of course. However, I should inform you that Luminaire caters to a very specific clientele. Our pieces start in the 5-figure range. We want to ensure customers have a realistic understanding before investing time. The implication was crystal clear. Elena tilted her head slightly. And you've determined I'm not part of that clientele? Diane's laugh was light, dismissive. I'm simply managing expectations. We pride ourselves on efficiency. Efficiency, Elena repeated softly. Exactly. Diane glanced toward Mrs. Harrington, who was now examining a second ring. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have clients to attend to. She walked away without waiting for a response. Elena stood in the center of the showroom, surrounded by millions of dollars in jewelry, treated like an intruder in the empire she'd built with her own hands. She didn't move. She simply waited and watched. Minutes passed. More customers entered. A young Asian couple looking at wedding bands received courteous service. An older white gentleman browsing cufflinks was offered a catalog and coffee. Each interaction followed a pattern. Warmth toward some, coolness toward others. The variable wasn't behavior, it was appearance. Elena's phone buzzed in her bag. She ignored it. Near the entrance, Jessica was rearranging a display. Her movements were quick, nervous. Elena noticed the way she glanced toward Diane every few seconds, like a student checking for approval. Marcus stood at the back counter, his shoulders slightly hunched, his earlier enthusiasm dimmed. Elena moved toward a central display, a glass case showcasing Luminaire's signature collection. These were the crown jewels, pieces that had been featured in magazines, worn by celebrities, auctioned for charity. Each one represented years of her work, her vision, her refusal to compromise on ethics or beauty. She leaned in, studying a necklace she remembered commissioning, tanzanite and diamonds set in white gold. The designer had called her 3 times during its creation, ensuring every detail matched her specifications. Incredible, isn't it? Elena turned. An older black woman stood beside her, well-dressed, carrying herself with quiet dignity. Her name tag read, Lorraine. It is, Elena said. Lorraine smiled. I've worked here for 8 years. That piece still takes my breath away every time I see it. Elena's gaze sharpened with interest. 8 years? Yes, ma'am. I've seen this company grow, seen it change. Lorraine's voice carried a weight of unspoken meaning. Change how? Lorraine's smile faded slightly. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Let's just say the values we started with, they don't always show up in practice anymore. Before Elena could respond, Diane's voice rang out again. Lorraine, can you assist with inventory? Lorraine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. She gave Elena a small, knowing nod, then walked away. Elena remained at the display case. She was beginning to see the full picture now, the cracks in the foundation, the rot beneath the polish. This wasn't just about one manager. This was systemic, cultural, a shift that had happened slowly, quietly, while she'd been focused on expansion, on new markets, on scaling the business. She'd built Luminaire on a promise that luxury and integrity could coexist, that beauty didn't require exploitation, that every customer, regardless of background, deserved respect. Somewhere along the way, that promise had been broken. Her phone buzzed again. This time she pulled it out. A text from her COO. Board meeting rescheduled to 3 p.m. Confirming your attendance? Elena typed back, I'll be there. She slipped the phone back into her bag. Then she walked directly toward the case holding the $65,000 tennis bracelet Jessica had refused to show her. Diane was still with Mrs. Harrington, but her eyes tracked Elena's movement like a hawk watching prey. Elena stood in front of the case, her hands clasped in front of her, her expression serene. Within 30 seconds, Diane excused herself from Mrs. Harrington and approached. Is there something specific you need? Diane asked, her patience clearly wearing thin. Elena gestured to the bracelet. I'd like to see this piece. Diane's smile was brittle. As I mentioned, high-value items require verified purchase intent. And how does one verify intent? Diane's eyes narrowed. Proof of funds, a credit check, bank statements. We can't simply hand out $100,000 pieces to anyone who walks in. Elena's voice remained calm. That bracelet is $65,000, not $100,000. Same principle, Diane said curtly. Elena nodded slowly. I see. And Mrs. Harrington, did she provide proof of funds? Diane stiffened. Mrs. Harrington is a valued, established client. Established how? That's confidential client information. Of course. Elena paused. So the policy isn't actually about value. It's about discretion. Diane's smile vanished. It's about protecting our inventory and maintaining the integrity of this store. Integrity, Elena repeated, her voice soft as silk. The word seemed to land like a challenge. Diane crossed her arms. Ma'am, I'm going to be frank with you. Luminaire serves a very exclusive clientele. We have standards, expectations. If you're not comfortable with that, there are other jewelry stores in the area that might be a better fit. Elena held her gaze. You're suggesting I leave? I'm suggesting you consider whether this is the right environment for you. The air between them crackled with tension. Elena didn't raise her voice, didn't show anger. She simply asked, and if I refuse? Diane's expression hardened. Then I'll have to ask security to escort you out. The showroom fell silent. Mrs. Harrington had stopped mid-sentence, her champagne flute frozen halfway to her lips. Jessica stood near the entrance, her face pale. Marcus watched from the back, his hands clenched at his sides. Lorraine had emerged from the inventory room, her eyes wide. Elena reached into her bag. Diane's hand moved instinctively toward the security button beneath the counter. But Elena didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out her phone. Before you call security, Elena said, her voice quiet but edged with steel, let me make my call. Diane laughed, a short, incredulous sound. You think calling someone will change anything? Elena didn't answer. She simply dialed. The phone rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Elena? Richard, Elena said calmly. I'm at the Beverly Hills location. I need you here in 10 minutes. Is everything all right? Not exactly, but it will be. She ended the call. Diane stared at her, confusion beginning to creep into her confidence. Who did you just call? Elena slipped her phone back into her bag. Someone who can verify my purchase intent. Diane's laugh was uncertain now. Ma'am, I don't know what you think. You asked for proof, Elena said simply. You'll have it. The minutes that followed were excruciating. Diane hovered nearby, her arms crossed, her expression wavering between annoyance and unease. Mrs. Harrington had resumed her browsing, but her attention kept drifting toward Elena. Jessica stood frozen near a display case. Marcus pretended to organize inventory, but his eyes never left Elena. Lorraine approached slowly, her voice low. Ma'am, are you sure you want to stay? Sometimes it's easier to just... I'm sure, Elena said gently. Lorraine studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right. 7 minutes later, the front door opened. A tall man in his 50s entered, wearing an impeccable charcoal suit and carrying a leather briefcase. His silver hair was neatly combed, his expression serious. He scanned the room until his eyes found Elena. "Ms. Cross," he said, his voice formal but warm. Diane's head snapped up. "Ms. Cross?" Richard walked directly to Elena. "I came as quickly as I could. What's going on?" Elena gestured toward Diane. "This is Diane Mercer, the store manager. She's been managing expectations." Richard's gaze shifted to Diane, his expression cooling. "I see." Diane's face had gone pale. "I'm sorry, I don't... Who are you?" Richard extended his hand. "Richard Chen, Chief Operating Officer of Luminaire International." Diane's hand trembled as she shook his. "The COO?" "Yes." Richard turned back to Elena. "You said you needed verification?" Elena nodded toward the tennis bracelet. "Miss Mercer has been concerned about my purchase intent. She wanted proof of funds." Richard's jaw tightened. He turned to Diane. "You requested financial verification from Ms. Cross?" Diane stammered. It's policy. For high-value items, you required proof?" Richard said slowly, "from the founder and CEO of this company?" The words detonated like a bomb. Mrs. Harrington gasped. Jessica dropped the ring she'd been holding. Marcus's eyes went wide. Diane's face drained of all color. The CEO. Elena stepped forward, her voice calm and measured. "My name is Elena Cross. I founded Luminaire 15 years ago with one store and a belief that luxury should never come at the cost of dignity for the people who make our jewelry or the people who buy it." Diane's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Elena continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I've spent the last hour in this store observing how customers are treated. What I've seen is a betrayal of everything Luminaire was built to represent." Her eyes landed on Diane. "You judged me the moment I walked in, not by my questions, not by my interest, but by my appearance, my clothes, the color of my skin. You decided I didn't belong here." Diane's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't mean—" "You did," Elena said quietly. "Every word, every gesture, every dismissive glance. You meant all of it." The silence was suffocating. Elena turned to Marcus. "You tried to help me. You showed respect and professionalism, and you were reprimanded for it." Marcus's eyes glistened. Elena looked at Lorraine. "You've been here 8 years. You've watched this place change, watched the values erode." Lorraine nodded, her expression pained. Elena's gaze returned to Diane. "You asked if I belonged here. Let me answer that question." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a tone that was somehow both gentle and devastating. "I don't just belong here, Miss Mercer. I am here. Every case, every diamond, every policy that's supposed to protect dignity instead of destroy it. This is my name on the door, my vision in every design, my promise in every transaction." Diane's knees seemed to buckle. Elena held her gaze. "And you just tried to have me thrown out of my own store." The weight of those words crushed down like a collapsing ceiling. Diane's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You thought I was someone you could dismiss," Elena said. "Someone who didn't matter. Someone whose dignity was negotiable." Tears began streaming down Diane's face. Elena didn't move. "Do you understand what you've done?" Diane nodded, her shoulders shaking. "Do you understand how many other people you've treated this way? People who didn't have my resources or my authority to fight back?" Diane's sobs intensified. Elena's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. "Discrimination doesn't require hatred, Ms. Mercer. It just requires assumptions. And you've been making them every day." She turned to Richard. "I want a full review of hiring practices, customer service protocols, and management accountability across all locations. Starting immediately." Richard nodded. "Understood." Elena addressed the rest of the staff. "To everyone watching, you have a choice. You can be part of a company that upholds dignity, or you can work somewhere else. But if you stay, You will treat every person who walks through that door with the same respect you'd show me." Marcus straightened, his chin lifting. Jessica wiped her eyes, nodding. Lorraine smiled, a weight visibly lifting from her shoulders. Elena looked one last time at Diane, who stood trembling, her perfect facade shattered. "You're terminated, effective immediately," Elena said quietly, "not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Because Luminaire can't be what it needs to be with people who see customers as categories instead of human beings." Diane's sobs echoed through the silent showroom. Elena turned toward the door. But before she left, she paused at the display case near the entrance, the one with the slightly crooked sign she'd noticed when she first walked in. She reached out and straightened it with careful precision. The gesture was small, but it said everything. Then Elena Cross walked out of Luminaire Beverly Hills, leaving behind a store that would never be the same, and a lesson that would ripple far beyond Rodeo Drive. Behind her, Richard began making calls. Marcus stood a little taller. Lorraine allowed herself to hope. And somewhere in the shattered silence, the true meaning of luxury began to rebuild itself. Not in diamonds, but in dignity. Not in wealth, but in worth. Not in who could afford to buy, but in who deserved to belong. The glass doors of Luminaire closed behind Elena with a soft whisper, sealing away the chaos she'd left in her wake. The afternoon sun hit her face, warm and unforgiving, as she stood on the sidewalk of Rodeo Drive. Around her, life continued. Tourists snapping photos, luxury cars gliding past, the hum of wealth and aspiration filling the air. But inside her chest, something had shifted. Not anger exactly, something colder, more precise. Richard emerged moments later, his briefcase in hand, his expression tight with controlled fury. "That was worse than I imagined," he said, falling into step beside her. Elena didn't slow her pace. "How long has Diane Mercer been manager there?" 18 months. She came highly recommended from Cartier." "Recommended for what?" "Her ability to alienate half our potential customer base." Richard winced. "Elena, I had no idea it had gotten this bad. The quarterly reports showed strong sales, customer satisfaction scores where scores can be manipulated," Elena cut in. "Especially when the people being dismissed don't bother leaving reviews. They just leave." They reached Elena's car, a modest black sedan that always drew curious looks when she parked it among the Bentleys and Ferraris. She unlocked it but didn't get in. Instead, she turned to face Richard, her eyes hard. "I want a complete audit. Every location, every manager. I want to see hiring demographics, customer interaction logs, promotion histories, and complaint records." Richard pulled out his phone, already typing notes. "I'll have the team start immediately." "Not the team," Elena said. "You, personally. I don't want this filtered through HR or legal. I want raw data." Richard looked up, meeting her gaze. After 20 years of working together, he knew when to push back and when to simply execute. This was the latter. "Understood," he said. What about Diane?" "Security will escort her out. I want her access revoked across all systems within the hour." "Done." Elena's jaw tightened. "And Richard?" "I want exit interviews with every employee who's left Luminaire in the past 2 years. I want to know what we missed." Richard's expression softened slightly. "Elena, you can't blame yourself for—" "I built this company on a promise," Elena said, her voice quiet but fierce. "If I'm not keeping that promise, then yes, I absolutely can blame myself." She slid into the driver's seat. Richard leaned down, his hand on the door frame. "Where are you headed now?" he asked. "The downtown location, unannounced." Richard's eyes widened. "Elena, maybe you should take a breath. Process what just happened." "I've been processing for the last hour," Elena said, starting the engine. "Now I'm acting." She pulled away from the curb, leaving Richard standing on the sidewalk with his phone already pressed to his ear. The drive to downtown Los Angeles took 40 minutes through midday traffic. Elena spent the time replaying every interaction from the Beverly Hills store, cataloging each microaggression, each subtle dismissal. Diane's behavior hadn't emerged in a vacuum. It had been allowed to flourish, rewarded even, with strong sales numbers and apparent efficiency. But efficiency at what cost? The downtown Luminaire occupied the ground floor of a converted bank building, its high ceilings and marble columns lending an air of old-world grandeur. Elena had chosen this location specifically to serve a different demographic: young professionals, couples saving for their first major purchase, immigrants celebrating success in a new country. She parked a block away and walked, her heels clicking against concrete still warm from the sun. Through the windows, she could see customers browsing. The space was busier than Beverly Hills had been. More energy, more diversity. A young Latina woman examined engagement rings while her partner watched nervously. An elderly Asian couple spoke in Mandarin with a sales associate. A black man in a delivery uniform stood near the watches, his eyes lingering on a chronograph. Elena pushed open the door. The chime sounded. Heads turned briefly, then returned to their browsing. No one rushed to greet her. No one offered champagne. But unlike Beverly Hills, no one seemed to be actively discouraging her presence either. She moved slowly through the space, observing. A young sales associate, white, early 20s, name tag reading Connor, was helping the Latina couple. His manner was patient, enthusiastic even, as he explained the difference between various diamond cuts. "The princess cut gives you more brilliance," Connor said, angling a ring under the light. "But the round cut is classic. Really, it comes down to personal style." The woman smiled, clearly appreciating his lack of pressure. Elena drifted toward the watch section. The man in the delivery uniform was still there, his fingers hovering over the glass case, but not quite touching. "That's a beautiful piece." The man startled, looking up to find Elena beside him. "Yeah," he said, his voice cautious. "Just looking." "The Constellation series," Elena said, nodding toward the watch. "Automatic movement, sapphire crystal. It's one of my favorites." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. "You know watches?" "A little," Elena said with a small smile. "Are you shopping for yourself or a gift?" He hesitated, then seemed to decide she was safe to talk to. "My dad. He's retiring next month after 30 years driving buses. I wanted to get him something special." Elena's expression softened. 30 years. That's real dedication. "He never missed a day," the man said, pride evident in his voice. "Even when he was sick, even when—" He stopped himself. "Sorry, I'm talking too much." "Not at all," Elena said. "That watch would be a perfect tribute to that kind of commitment. But can I show you something?" She gestured to a different case, where a simpler but equally elegant timepiece sat. "This one has a custom engraving option," Elena said. "Same quality movement, but you could add a personal message on the back, something about those 30 years. The man's eyes lit up. "Really? How much does that add to the cost?" Before Elena could answer, a voice interrupted. "Sir, that particular model requires a deposit before we can discuss customization options." Elena turned. A man in his 40s approached, his suit immaculate, his smile professional but cool. His name tag read Trevor Walsh, assistant manager. "I was just explaining the features," Elena said mildly. Trevor's eyes flicked over her, dismissive. "I appreciate that, but I'll need to verify purchase capability before we invest time in customization discussions." The delivery driver's face flushed. "I can afford it. I've been saving." "I'm sure you have," Trevor said, his tone suggesting the opposite. "But our policy—" "Your policy," Elena interrupted quietly, "is to serve customers with respect, not suspicion." Trevor's smile tightened. "And you are?" "Someone who'd like to see the manager." Trevor's laugh was short. "I am the assistant manager, and I'm managing this situation. So if you'd like to browse, feel free, but please don't interfere with customer interactions." Elena held his gaze. "The customer interaction I'm seeing is you assuming this gentleman can't afford a watch based on his uniform." The delivery driver looked between them, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, it's fine. I'll just—" "No," Elena said gently. "It's not fine." She turned back to Trevor. "Where's your manager?" "Sandra's at lunch. She'll be back in 20 minutes. "Then I'll wait." Trevor's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you not to disrupt our floor." "I'm not disrupting anything." "Disrupting? I'm a customer. I'm browsing. Isn't that allowed?" The standoff drew attention. Connor glanced over from the engagement ring section. The elderly couple paused their conversation. Even the Latina woman looked up, concern crossing her face. Trevor stepped closer, lowering his voice. I don't know what your problem is, but this is a place of business. If you continue to cause issues, I'll have to call security. Elena's phone buzzed in her bag. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, a message from Richard. Diane escorted out, legal reviewing severance. Downtown next? She typed back. Already here. Trevor's patience evaporated. Are you even listening to me? Elena looked up, her expression serene. Every word. You're threatening to call security because I'm advocating for a customer to be treated with basic respect. I'm managing my floor, Trevor shot back. Then manage it better. Trevor's face reddened. He pulled out his phone. That's it. I'm calling Sandra. Please do, Elena said. Trevor stepped away, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice tight as he spoke. The delivery driver shifted uncomfortably beside Elena. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I don't want to cause trouble. Elena turned to him, her voice gentle. You're not causing trouble. You came here to honor your father. That deserves respect, not interrogation. His eyes glistened slightly. Thank you. 5 minutes later, a woman in her 50s hurried through the back entrance, her expression harried. She wore a navy pantsuit and carried herself with the brisk efficiency of someone used to putting out fires. Her name tag read Sandra Oakes, store manager. Trevor intercepted her immediately, speaking in low, urgent tones and gesturing toward Elena. Sandra approached, her smile professional but strained. Good afternoon. I'm Sandra, the manager. Trevor mentioned there's been some confusion. No confusion, Elena said calmly. Just a difference in understanding about how customers should be treated. Sandra's eyes did a quick assessment. Elena's modest clothing, her lack of jewelry, her worn bag. Elena saw the calculation happen in real time. I see, Sandra said carefully. Well, I assure you we treat all our customers with the utmost respect, but we do have policies in place to ensure smooth operations. Policies that require proof of funds before discussing product features? Sandra's smile faltered. Policies that help us manage time efficiently and ensure serious buyers receive appropriate attention. And how do you determine who's serious? The question hung in the air. Sandra's discomfort grew visible. We use professional judgment. Based on what criteria? Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're implying, but I'm not implying anything, Elena said. I'm asking directly. What makes someone a serious buyer in your professional judgment? Sandra glanced at Trevor, then back to Elena. Their demeanor, their questions, their presentation? Their clothes, Elena said flatly. Their overall presentation, Sandra corrected, but her voice wavered. Elena nodded slowly. I see. And this gentleman, she gestured to the delivery driver. What did his presentation tell you? Sandra's face flushed. I wasn't involved in that interaction. But you're defending it. I'm defending my staff's right to manage their time. At the expense of a man trying to honor his father. The delivery driver spoke up, his voice stronger now. 30 years. My dad drove buses for 30 years. I saved for 4 months to afford this. I came here because I thought Luminaire was supposed to be different. The words hit like a hammer. Sandra's composure cracked. Sir, I apologize if you felt... He didn't feel anything, Elena interrupted. He was treated as less than. There's no if about it. Trevor stepped forward. Look, whoever you are, you don't get to come in here and... Elena Cross. The name dropped like a stone into still water. Sandra's face went white. What? Elena Cross. Elena repeated, her voice steady and clear. Founder and CEO of Luminaire International. Trevor stumbled backward. Sandra's hand flew to her mouth. Connor, still standing near the engagement ring display, whispered, Oh my God. The elderly couple stopped talking entirely. The Latina woman's eyes went wide. Elena continued, her gaze locked on Sandra. I walked in here 15 minutes ago. Not one person greeted me, not one person offered assistance. And when I tried to help a customer who was being profiled, your assistant manager threatened to call security. Sandra's voice came out as a whisper. Miss Cross, I had no idea. That's the problem, Elena said, her voice quiet but cutting. You had no idea because you've stopped seeing people. You see uniforms. You see price points. You see risk assessments. She turned to the delivery driver. What's your name? Marcus, he said, then caught himself. Wait, different Marcus. Marcus Rodriguez. Elena smiled slightly. Mr. Rodriguez, would you like that watch for your father? He nodded, not trusting his voice. Elena turned to Connor, who stood frozen near the engagement rings. Connor, can you please help Mr. Rodriguez with his purchase? Full customization, no deposit required. My authorization. Connor's face lit up. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Elena looked at Sandra. That will be deducted from your commission and added to Connor's. Sandra opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Elena addressed Trevor. You're suspended pending review. Leave your access card with Sandra and go home. Trevor's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally, resignation. He fumbled with his wallet, pulled out a card, and placed it on the counter with trembling hands. Without another word, he walked toward the exit. The door chimed as he left. Sandra stood rooted to the spot, tears beginning to stream down her face. Miss Cross, please, I've been with Luminaire for 6 years. I've always hit my targets. You've managed numbers, Elena said. Not people, not values, numbers. I can change. I can do better. Elena studied her for a long moment. Maybe you can, but right now I need someone to run this store who already understands what better looks like. She turned to Connor. How long have you worked here? Connor looked up from helping Marcus Rodriguez, surprise crossing his face. 8 months, Ms. Cross? Do you like it? I love it, Connor said without hesitation. I mean, most days. When we're actually helping people, when we're making moments special, yeah, I love it. How would you run this store differently? Connor blinked. Me. You. He glanced at Sandra, then back to Elena. When he spoke, his voice was careful but honest. I train everyone to see the story behind the purchase. Not the price tag, but the reason. Every piece we sell is part of someone's life. A proposal, an anniversary, a retirement. If we remembered that, we'd treat everyone like they matter. Elena felt something settle in her chest. That's exactly right. She turned back to Sandra. You're reassigned. Corporate office, sales analysis. You'll keep your salary, but not your store authority. Sandra's shoulders sagged. And Connor? Connor is the new interim manager, effective immediately. The room erupted in a ripple of shock and murmurs. Connor's face went pale. Ms. Cross, I'm only 23. I don't have management experience. You have something better, Elena said. You have the right values. The experience can be learned. She addressed the rest of the staff, her voice carrying through the showroom. To everyone here, this company was built on the belief that luxury is about honoring people, not excluding them. If you can't operate from that principle, you don't belong at Luminaire. If you can, I want you to help rebuild what we've lost. The elderly couple approached slowly. The man spoke in accented English. Excuse me, we have been watching. This is very good thing you do. Elena smiled. Thank you. The woman added, we came to buy anniversary gift, 50 years married, but we were nervous. Thought maybe we not welcome. Elena's heart clenched. You are absolutely welcome. Connor, can you personally assist these guests? Connor straightened, a mixture of nerves and determination crossing his face. It would be my honor. As Connor guided the couple toward the anniversary collection, Elena turned to Marcus Rodriguez, who stood holding a receipt and a small Luminaire box. All set? She asked. He nodded, his eyes still slightly dazed. They're engraving it. It'll be ready in 3 days. He paused. Miss Cross, I don't know what to say. Say you'll tell your father the story, Elena said. Tell him that someone believed he deserved to be honored. Marcus's voice thickened. I will. Thank you. He left, walking a little taller than when he'd entered. Elena's phone buzzed again. Richard. Just received complaint from Beverly Hills neighbor store. They saw Diane being escorted out. Press might pick it up. Elena typed back, let them. We're not hiding this. Sandra still stood nearby, her face a mask of devastation. Elena approached her, lowering her voice. Sandra, I'm not destroying your career. I'm redirecting it. You're good with numbers, with logistics. Use those skills where they fit. But managing people requires empathy you haven't demonstrated. Sandra wiped her eyes. I thought I was doing what the company wanted. Sales were up. Efficiency was at the expense of our soul, Elena finished. That's not efficiency. That's erosion. Sandra nodded slowly, acceptance finally settling over her features. I'll do better in the new role. I believe you will, Elena said. Then she added, and Sandra, thank you for 6 years of service. That matters. But so does growth. Sandra managed a small, broken smile. Yes, ma'am. As Sandra gathered her things from the office, Elena walked through the store one more time. Connor was showing the elderly couple a beautiful diamond pendant, his manner gentle and patient. The Latina woman was trying on rings, her partner beaming. Another customer had entered, a young black woman in scrubs, probably just off a nursing shift, and a staff member was already greeting her warmly. This was what Luminaire was supposed to be. Elena's phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen. Talk to me, she answered. We have a problem, Richard said. A big one. Elena stepped outside, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the street. What kind of problem? I pulled the employee exit data like you asked. Elena, we've lost 47 employees across all locations in the past 18 months. 47. Her stomach dropped. What's the usual annual turnover? 12 to 15. We're at triple that. And Elena, Richard's voice tightened. 32 of those 47 were people of color. The numbers hit like a physical blow. Send me everything, Elena said. Every exit interview, every complaint, every HR note. There's more. I started making calls. 3 former employees are willing to talk. They have stories, bad ones. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Set up meetings. I want to hear directly from them. When? Tonight, tomorrow, as soon as possible. Richard paused. Elena, this is bigger than a few bad managers. This is systemic. I know, Elena said, her voice hollow. That's why we're not stopping until we've torn it out root and branch. She ended the call and stood on the sidewalk, watching the city move around her. Somewhere in the building behind her, Connor was learning to be a manager based on compassion instead of suspicion. Marcus Rodriguez was heading home with a gift that honored his father's dignity. An elderly couple was celebrating 50 years together with people who actually saw them. But in offices across the Luminaire empire, data was painting a darker picture. One of creeping discrimination, of values abandoned in pursuit of profit, of promises broken so gradually that no one had noticed until the foundation cracked. Elena had built something beautiful. Now she had to save it from the rot that had grown in the shadows. She pulled out her phone and opened her calendar. Tomorrow morning, Miami location. Tomorrow afternoon, Chicago. Tomorrow night, New York. She would visit every store, meet every manager, face every failure. Because if Luminaire was going to survive, it needed more than an audit. It needed a reckoning. And Elena Cross, the woman who'd been dismissed in her own store, was going to deliver it personally. One location, one conversation, one painful truth at a time. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Inside Luminaire downtown, the lights glowed warm and welcoming. Outside, Elena stood at the threshold between what had been and what needed to be. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked back inside. There was work to do, and she was just getting started. The conference room on the 32nd floor of Luminaire's corporate headquarters felt too small for the weight of what was about to happen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Los Angeles, the city sprawling beneath a sky streaked with the last colors of sunset. Elena sat at the head of a long table, Richard to her right, a legal pad in front of her covered in notes she'd been making since 4 that morning. Across from her sat 3 former employees, each one a story she'd failed to hear when it mattered. The first was Jasmine Chen, 28, who'd worked at the Houston location for 2 years before quitting last spring. She sat with her hands folded, her posture straight, but her eyes held something guarded. Beside her was Marcus, the other Marcus. Marcus Williams from the Beverly Hills store, whose attempt to help Elena had gotten him reprimanded. He'd resigned 3 weeks after that incident, though Elena hadn't known about it until Richard pulled the records. The third was an older woman, 60s perhaps, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and hands that trembled slightly as they rested on the table. Her name was Patricia Morales, and she'd been with Luminaire for 9 years before leaving the Seattle location 6 months ago. Elena had asked them here, had personally called each one, explained what she was trying to do, and asked if they'd be willing to share their experiences. All three had agreed, though their voices over the phone had carried varying degrees of skepticism. Now they sat in the space where corporate decisions got made, where profit margins were analyzed and expansion strategies debated, and Elena realized how far removed this room was from the sales floors, where the actual soul of her company either thrived or died. "Thank you for coming," Elena began, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I know this isn't easy. I know you have every reason not to trust that this conversation will lead to anything real." Jasmine's expression didn't change. Marcus shifted in his seat. Patricia met Elena's eyes directly. "But I'm asking you to tell me the truth anyway," Elena continued. "Not the polished version, not what you think I want to hear, the actual truth about what it was like to work for Luminaire." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Patricia spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "Do you really want to know, Ms. Cross? Or do you want to feel better about what you've built?" The question landed like a blade between ribs. Elena didn't flinch. "I want to know, even if it destroys me to hear it." Patricia studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll start." She took a breath, her hands clasping tighter together. "I love working at Luminaire. When I started 9 years ago, it felt like a family. The store manager knew my grandchildren's names. We celebrated birthdays, supported each other through hard times. I was proud to wear the name tag." Her voice wavered. "But about 3 years ago, things started changing. New regional management came in. They talked a lot about metrics, about efficiency, about maximizing conversion rates. They brought in consultants who taught us how to qualify customers within the first 30 seconds. Elena's pen stilled on the paper. "Qualify them how?" Richard asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Patricia's laugh was bitter. "Oh, they never said it explicitly. They used terms like identifying serious buyers and allocating resources strategically, but we all knew what it meant. We were supposed to look at how people dressed, how they spoke, what kind of car they drove if we could see it through the window." Jasmine jumped in, her voice harder. "They gamified it. At Houston, they had a leaderboard showing who had the highest qualification accuracy. Well, managers got bonuses based on their team's conversion rates, so if you wasted time on someone who didn't buy, it hurt your numbers. Which meant," Marcus added quietly, "we learned to make snap judgments, and those judgments were almost always biased." Elena felt something cold settling in her chest. "Did anyone push back?" Patricia nodded. "I did, multiple times. I told my manager that we were losing customers, that people would come in excited and leave feeling humiliated. She told me I was being too sensitive, that business was business." "What happened when you kept pushing?" Elena asked. Patricia's jaw tightened. "My hours got cut. Then I was moved from the main floor to inventory management. Then my performance reviews started, including notes about my resistance to new protocols and difficulty adapting to change." "They managed you out," Richard said, recognition and disgust mingling in his voice. "They made it clear I wasn't wanted anymore," Patricia confirmed. "So I left. After 9 years of giving everything to that company, I left because I couldn't stand what we'd become." Elena's hand moved across the page, documenting everything, but her heart was breaking with each word. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't pay my bills," Patricia said, not unkindly. "Sorry doesn't give me back the career I loved. Sorry doesn't undo the customers we hurt." Jasmine leaned forward. "Do you want to know the worst part? The absolute worst part?" Elena nodded, bracing herself. "It worked," Jasmine said, her voice thick with anger. "The new strategies increased sales at most locations. Conversion rates went up because we were only spending time on people we knew would buy. The quarterly reports looked fantastic. So corporate kept pushing the same approach, kept rewarding the managers who implemented it most aggressively. "You were rewarding discrimination," Marcus said bluntly. "Maybe not intentionally, but the effect was the same." The words hung in the air like an indictment. Elena set down her pen. "Tell me about the day you tried to help me, Marcus." His eyes met hers, and she saw the memory of that humiliation flicker across his face. "That wasn't the first time Diane had shut me down for helping someone she didn't think belonged there. It was just the first time someone with power witnessed it. How many other times? Dozens, Marcus said. Maybe more. There was an elderly black man who wanted to buy his wife a bracelet for their anniversary. Diane made me ask him to fill out a financial verification form before I could show him anything over $10,000. He left without buying anything, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. Elena's throat tightened. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. There was a young Hispanic couple, probably early 20s, saving up for an engagement ring. They came in 3 times, each time with more money saved. But Diane kept steering them toward the cheaper options, making comments about being realistic about their budget. They finally bought a ring at Tiffany instead. Why didn't you report it? Richard asked. Marcus's laugh was hollow. I did. I filed a complaint with HR after the second incident with the elderly man. You know what happened? I got called into a meeting with Diane and the regional manager. They told me I was demonstrating poor judgment about resource allocation and that if I wanted to succeed at Luminaire, I needed to trust management's expertise. They blamed you, Elena said, the realization hitting like a physical weight. They made it clear that my job was on the line if I kept making waves, Marcus confirmed. So I had a choice: keep fighting and get fired, or stay quiet and keep my paycheck. I chose to stay quiet. Until the day you walked in, and I saw Diane treating you the exact same way, and something in me just broke. His voice cracked. I thought maybe if I helped you, if I did the right thing just once, it would make up for all the times I'd stayed silent. But then she humiliated me in front of everyone, and I realized nothing was going to change. So I quit. Elena reached across the table, her hand covering his. You did nothing wrong. You were put in an impossible position by people who'd abandoned the values they were supposed to uphold. But I still stayed silent, Marcus said. I still let it happen. Because you needed to survive, Elena said gently. That's not moral failure. That's systemic failure. And the system failed you. Jasmine pulled out her phone, scrolling through old messages. I kept screenshots, text messages from my manager telling me to focus on high-potential customers, emails about optimizing floor time. Look at this one. She turned the phone toward Elena. The email was from a regional director to all Houston staff. Remember, our goal is not to serve everyone who walks in, but to convert those most likely to purchase. Time is money. Spend it wisely. Elena felt nauseous. Who sent this? David Winters, Regional Director, Southwest Division. Elena looked at Richard. Is he still employed? Richard checked his tablet. Yes, he's actually been promoted. He's now overseeing the entire Western region. The irony was devastating. The man who'd institutionalized discrimination had been rewarded for his results. Patricia spoke again, her voice softer now. Ms. Cross, can I ask you something? Anything. Did you know any of this? Did you have any idea what was happening in your stores? Elena wanted to make excuses. She wanted to talk about rapid expansion, about delegation, about trusting her leadership team, but sitting across from 3 people who'd been damaged by her company's failures, excuses felt obscene. No, she said simply. I didn't know. But I should have. I got so focused on growth, on opening new locations, on competing with established brands that I stopped paying attention to whether we were still operating according to our founding principles. So what now? Jasmine asked. You fire a few managers, make some policy changes, and hope it goes away? No, Elena said firmly. We rebuild from the ground up. She stood, walking to the windows. The city lights were beginning to sparkle as darkness settled over Los Angeles. Somewhere down there, in stores bearing her name, customers were being served. Some with dignity, some without. And until today, she'd been blind to the difference. I want to hire all 3 of you back, Elena said, turning to face them. The surprise on their faces was immediate. Not in your old positions, she continued. I want you to help me fix this. Patricia, I want you to lead a complete review of management practices across all locations. Jasmine, I want you to redesign our training programs to eliminate bias. Marcus, I want you to work directly with store staff to rebuild a culture where speaking up is rewarded, not punished. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Why should we believe this is anything more than damage control? Because I'm giving you the authority to burn it all down if you need to, Elena said. You'll report directly to me. You'll have access to everything: finances, personnel records, customer complaints, internal communications, and you'll have the power to recommend terminations, restructuring, whatever it takes. That's a lot of trust to put in 3 people you just met, Marcus said carefully. I trusted the people who created this mess, Elena replied. Maybe it's time to trust the people who were hurt by it, Jasmine crossed her arms. And if we find things you don't like, things that implicate people you're close to, then we deal with it, Elena said. No exceptions. No protection for anyone, including me. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Elena, legally speaking, we should probably... Richard, Elena cut him off gently. I appreciate your concern, but we're past the point where legal caution will save us. We need moral courage. The 3 former employees exchanged glances, a silent conversation happening in the space between them. Finally, Patricia spoke. I'll need complete autonomy, no interference, no second-guessing. You'll have it, Elena promised. Jasmine added, and I want it in writing that we can't be fired for what we uncover. Done. Marcus looked at the other 2, then back to Elena. If we do this, we're going to find things that will hurt. Things that might destroy relationships, reputations, maybe even the company itself. I know, Elena said. But if we don't do this, we've already lost what made the company worth saving in the first place. The silence that followed felt heavy with the weight of a decision that would reshape everything. Then Patricia extended her hand. All right, Ms. Cross, you've got yourself a team. Elena shook it, relief and trepidation mixing in her chest. Jasmine and Marcus followed, each handshake a pact, a promise, a point of no return. Richard immediately began making notes. We'll need to set up secure systems for the investigation, establish protocols for... A knock on the conference room door interrupted him. Elena's assistant, Claire, poked her head in, her face pale. Ms. Cross, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. She entered, tablet in hand, and set it on the table. A news website glowed on the screen, the headline bold and damning. Luxury jewelry empire luminaire accused of systemic racism after CEO escorted own founder from store. Elena's stomach dropped. How did they get this? Someone at Beverly Hills took video, Claire said quietly. It's going viral. The story broke 20 minutes ago. Richard grabbed the tablet, scrolling through the article. His face darkened with each paragraph. They have quotes from anonymous employees, details about Diane's termination, speculation about company-wide discrimination. Jasmine leaned over to read, her eyebrows rising. This is going to explode. As if on cue, Elena's phone began buzzing. Then Richard's. Then Claire's. Within seconds, all 3 were ringing continuously. Elena glanced at her screen. News outlets, business journalists, PR firms offering crisis management services. The storm had arrived faster than she'd anticipated. Patricia's voice cut through the chaos. Ms. Cross, you have about 6 hours before this dominates the news cycle. What are you going to say? Every crisis management instinct, every legal safeguard, every protective impulse screamed at Elena to deflect, minimize, spin. She could issue a carefully worded statement about isolated incidents and ongoing internal reviews. She could promise vague commitments to diversity and inclusion. She could protect the brand, protect the stock price, protect her own legacy. But sitting in that room with 3 people who'd been crushed by corporate cowardice, Elena knew there was only one choice that aligned with the woman she'd always believed herself to be. I'm going to tell the truth, she said. Richard's head snapped up. Elena, you should really consult with legal before... The truth, Richard, Elena repeated. All of it. She looked at Claire. Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning, here, in the lobby, open to all media. Claire's eyes widened. Are you sure? Completely. Jasmine studied Elena with new intensity. You know this could destroy everything you've built. What I built is already damaged, Elena said. The only question is whether I have the courage to face that publicly. Patricia leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You might actually mean this. I do, Elena said. Because if I don't, then the past 15 years have been a lie, and I'm not willing to accept that. Marcus spoke, his voice thoughtful. If you're really going to do this, you need to go beyond apology. You need to announce concrete actions. Elena turned to him. Like what? Like the investigation, Marcus said. Like hiring us. Like committing to transparency about what you find. Jasmine added, and you need to acknowledge that this isn't about one bad manager. This is systemic. If you minimize it, people will see through it immediately. Patricia nodded. And you need to accept responsibility. Not mistakes were made, corporate speak. Personal accountability. Elena listened to each suggestion, her mind already forming the shape of what tomorrow would bring. Will you three be there? At the press conference? They exchanged glances again. If we are, Jasmine said, it legitimizes what you're saying. It shows you're serious. That's exactly why I'm asking, Elena said. Patricia considered, then nodded. I'll be there. Me too, Marcus said. Jasmine took longer, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed. Yeah, I'll be there. But Elena, if you back down, if you compromise, if you let lawyers talk you into softening the message, I'm walking out mid-conference. Fair enough, Elena said. The phones kept buzzing, the news kept spreading. Somewhere in the digital universe, opinions were forming, takes were being generated, and the narrative about Luminaire was being written by people who'd never set foot in one of her stores. But tomorrow, Elena would write her own narrative, one that acknowledged failure, committed to repair, and trusted that truth was stronger than spin. Richard stood, gathering his materials. I'm going to spend tonight preparing talking points, and no talking points, Elena interrupted. He stared at her. Elena, you can't go into a press conference without preparation. I'll prepare. But I'm not reading from a script. This needs to be real. Richard looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Elena's expression stopped him. All right, but I'm staying up all night researching legal precedents for what happens when CEOs admit to systemic failures. I appreciate that, Elena said with a small smile. As Richard left, Claire hovering nervously by the door, Elena turned back to Patricia, Jasmine, and Marcus. Thank you for coming tonight, for trusting me enough to share your stories. Patricia stood, smoothing her skirt. Don't thank us yet. We haven't saved anything. We've just agreed to try. That's more than I had this morning, Elena said. As the three of them prepared to leave, Jasmine paused at the door. Elena, one more thing. Yes? The customers we turned away, the people we hurt, they deserve to know this is happening, not just through news reports, directly. Elena nodded slowly. You're right. I'll make sure they're contacted personally. After they left, Elena stood alone in the conference room. The city sprawled below, indifferent to the crisis unfolding in this building. Somewhere out there, Marcus Rodriguez was probably showing his father the watch, telling him the story of the woman who'd intervened. Somewhere, the elderly couple from downtown was celebrating 50 years together with a piece of jewelry bought in dignity. Somewhere, people were being judged and dismissed and hurt in stores that bore her name. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her daughter. Mom, I just saw the news. Are you okay? Elena stared at the message. Her daughter was 19 in her second year at Howard University, studying social justice. She'd grown up hearing Elena's stories about building an ethical business, about doing well by doing good. What would she think now, knowing the gap between her mother's ideals and reality? Elena typed back, I've been better, but I'm going to make this right. The response came immediately. I know you will. I'm proud of you for facing it. Those words, from her daughter, meant more than any corporate accolade ever had. Elena gathered her things and headed for the elevator. As she descended through the building, she thought about tomorrow, about standing in front of cameras and reporters and admitting that she'd failed, about announcing an investigation that might uncover things even worse than what she already knew, about trusting 3 people she'd just met to tear apart and rebuild the company she'd spent 15 years creating. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. The security guard, an older man named Joseph, who'd been with the building for decades, looked up from his desk. Burning the midnight oil, Ms. Cross, he asked with a friendly smile. Something like that, Elena said. Joseph, can I ask you something? Of course. Have you ever had to admit you were completely wrong about something important? Joseph's expression shifted to something more thoughtful. My daughter didn't talk to me for 2 years because I didn't support her marriage. Thought her husband wasn't good enough. Finally realized the problem wasn't him, it was my own prejudices. What did you do? I apologized. Not one of those half apologies where you make excuses, a real one where you admit you were wrong and you hurt someone and you're going to do better. Did she forgive you? Joseph smiled. Eventually. But forgiveness came after I proved I'd changed. Apologies are just words until you back them up with action. Elena nodded. Thank you, Joseph. As she walked to her car, his words echoed in her mind. Apologies are just words until you back them up with action. Tomorrow, she would apologize. But the real work, the proving, the changing, the backing up words with action, that would take months, maybe years. Elena slid into her car and sat in the quiet darkness for a moment. Her phone lit up with another notification. Another news story. Another opinion piece. The world was talking about Luminaire, about her, about the failures she'd allowed to fester. Let them talk. Tomorrow, she would join the conversation, honestly, completely, without protection or spin. And then the real work would begin. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking garage, heading home through streets that had never looked quite this dark before. Somewhere ahead, dawn was inevitable. The question was whether she'd use the light to hide or to reveal. Elena had already made her choice. Now she just had to live with the consequences. The lobby of Luminaire's corporate headquarters had been transformed overnight into something resembling a battlefield prepared for surrender. Rows of chairs faced a small podium flanked by the company logo, cameras on tripods lined the back wall, and journalists clutched notebooks and recorders like weapons waiting to be deployed. Elena stood in a hallway just out of view, watching through a gap in the doorway as the room filled with people who'd come to witness what they assumed would be corporate damage control at its finest. Richard appeared at her elbow, his face drawn from lack of sleep. We still have time to reconsider the approach. I've drafted 3 versions of a statement that acknowledge issues without exposing us to— I'm not reading a statement, Elena said quietly. Elena, please. As your COO and your friend, I'm begging you to think about what you're about to do. The board is panicking. Our stock dropped 6% overnight. Legal is preparing for potential lawsuits. If you go out there and admit to systemic discrimination, we could be opening ourselves up to accountability, Elena finished. That's exactly what we need to open ourselves up to. Richard's jaw tightened. And if that accountability destroys the company? If we can't survive the fallout? Elena turned to face him fully. Then maybe we don't deserve to survive. Maybe a company that operates on discrimination is worse than no company at all. Before Richard could respond, Patricia appeared from around the corner, dressed in a navy suit that made her look every inch the executive she should have been allowed to become. Behind her came Jasmine in a crisp white blouse and black slacks, and Marcus in a gray suit that was probably borrowed but fit him perfectly. "We're ready when you are," Patricia said, her voice steady despite the chaos visible beyond the doorway. Elena took in the sight of them, these 3 people who'd been pushed out of her company and yet had chosen to stand beside her anyway. "Are you sure about this? Once we walk out there, there's no taking it back." Jasmine's smile was grim. "We've been living with what happened to us for months. It's your turn to live with it publicly." Marcus added, "Besides, if we don't do this, nothing changes, and I'm tired of nothing changing." Claire rushed up, her tablet glowing with notifications. "Ms. Cross, we have CNN, Bloomberg, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and about 30 other outlets out there. Social media is exploding. The hashtags #StandWithLuminaire and BoycottLuminaire are both trending. You're going to have maybe 2 minutes of questions before this becomes a feeding frenzy." Elena nodded, smoothing down the front of her simple black dress. She'd chosen it deliberately. No jewelry except her mother's wedding ring. No designer labels. Nothing that screamed wealth or privilege. She needed to be seen as a person, not a brand. 2 minutes is all I need for the opening statement, Elena said. After that, they can ask whatever they want. Richard looked like he might physically restrain her. "Elena." She placed a hand on his arm. "I know you're trying to protect me, but I don't need protection. I need to do the right thing." For a long moment, Richard held her gaze. Then his shoulders sagged in resignation. "I'll be in the front row. When it gets too rough, look at me. I'll be there." Elena felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you. Claire checked her watch. It's time. Elena took a breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped through the doorway into the lobby. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations ceased mid-sentence. Cameras swiveled toward her. The clicking of phone cameras created a sound like rainfall on pavement. She walked to the podium with Patricia, Jasmine, and Marcus following behind, each taking a position slightly to her left. The murmur of speculation rippled through the crowd as reporters tried to identify the three people standing with the CEO. Elena saw recognition dawn on a few faces, journalists who'd done their homework and knew these were former employees. Elena gripped the edges of the podium, her knuckles white against the dark wood. No notes, no teleprompter, just her and the truth. "Good morning," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the space. "My name is Elena Cross. 15 years ago, I founded Luminaire with a simple promise that luxury and integrity could coexist, that beautiful things could be created and sold without exploiting the people who made them or the people who bought them, that everyone, regardless of their background or the size of their bank account, deserved to be treated with dignity when they walked into one of our stores." She paused, letting the words settle. "Yesterday, I walked into the Beverly Hills location of Luminaire, the flagship store of a company I built with my own hands. I was dressed modestly. I wore no jewelry. I looked like someone who might be browsing, might be saving up, might be treating herself to something special. And within 10 minutes, the store manager had threatened to have me removed by security because she decided I didn't belong there." A reporter in the front row gasped audibly. Others leaned forward, pens poised. "The manager didn't know I was the founder. She didn't know I was the CEO. All she knew was that I was a black woman who didn't look wealthy enough to meet her standards. And so she treated me with contempt, with suspicion, with the kind of casual cruelty that tells you everything about how that person sees the world." Elena's voice remained steady, but emotion threaded through each word. "I could stand here and tell you that was an isolated incident, that one bad manager made one bad choice, but that would be a lie. Over the past 24 hours, I've learned that what happened to me has happened to countless others, that the promise I made 15 years ago has been systematically broken, store by store, interaction by interaction, until discrimination became not an aberration, but a pattern." She gestured to the three people standing behind her. "These are three former Luminaire employees. Patricia Morales worked for 9 years before she was pushed out for objecting to discriminatory practices. Marcus Williams tried to help a customer who was being profiled and was reprimanded, then quit rather than continue working in that environment. Jasmine Chen documented bias, reported it, and was told she was the problem, not the system." Patricia stepped forward slightly, her presence lending weight to Elena's words. Marcus stood taller. Jasmine's expression was fierce with vindication. "They're here because I asked them to help me rebuild what I allowed to crumble, because words without action are meaningless. And because I believe that the people who were hurt by a broken system should be the ones empowered to fix it." Elena paused, meeting the eyes of journalists in the crowd. "I take full responsibility for what Luminaire has become. As founder and CEO, the culture of this company reflects my leadership or my lack of it. I was so focused on expansion, on competition, on market share, that I failed to notice when the values we were built on started disappearing. I failed the customers who were dismissed and degraded. I failed the employees who tried to speak up and were silenced. I failed the promise I made." Her voice grew stronger, more determined, but failure doesn't have to be final. Starting today, Luminaire is undergoing a complete cultural transformation. Patricia, Jasmine, and Marcus will lead an independent investigation into discrimination at all Luminaire locations. They will have full access to all company records, all personnel files, all customer complaints. They will report directly to me, and their findings will be made public regardless of what they reveal or who they implicate. A reporter's hand shot up, but Elena continued. "Additionally, we are implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all employees at every level, from sales associates to executive leadership. We are revising our customer service protocols to eliminate any language or practices that enable profiling. We are establishing anonymous reporting systems so employees can flag discrimination without fear of retaliation. And we are committing to transparency, publishing quarterly reports on our progress." She gripped the podium tighter. I know some of you are thinking this is damage control, that I'm saying these things because I got caught, because the story went viral, because I'm trying to protect my brand. You're not entirely wrong. If that video hadn't been posted, if this story hadn't broken, would I be standing here right now? I'd like to think I would have discovered these problems eventually, but the honest answer is, I don't know. The admission hung in the air, raw and uncomfortable. What I do know is that I'm here now, and I have a choice. I can try to spin this, minimize it, wait for the news cycle to move on. Or I can face it head on, admit what's broken, and fight like hell to fix it. I'm choosing the latter. Not because it's good for business, but because it's right. And if being right means Luminaire doesn't survive, then maybe Luminaire shouldn't survive. The room erupted. Hands thrust into the air, voices calling out, cameras flashing like lightning. Elena nodded to a woman in the second row wearing a press badge from the New York Times. Jenna Martinez, New York Times. Ms. Cross, you mentioned potential lawsuits. Are you prepared for former employees and customers to sue based on what you've just admitted? Elena didn't hesitate. Yes. If people were harmed and they seek legal recourse, they have every right to do so. We won't fight those claims with technicalities or intimidation. We'll listen and we'll make amends where we can. Richard's face went pale in the front row, but he didn't interrupt. Another reporter, a young man from Bloomberg. What about the financial impact? Your stock is already down, and if this investigation finds widespread discrimination, we could be looking at massive liability. Have you considered what this means for shareholders? I have, Elena said, and I've decided that the shareholders invested in a company built on certain values. If we can't uphold those values, then we're not the company they invested in anyway. I'd rather rebuild from honesty than profit from hypocrisy. A woman from CNN. You fired the Beverly Hills manager. Will there be other terminations? Elena looked at Patricia, who stepped up to the microphone. That will depend on what we find, Patricia said, her voice clear and professional. But I can promise you this. Anyone who has actively participated in discrimination, who has retaliated against employees for speaking up, or who has created hostile environments for customers or staff will be held accountable. This isn't a symbolic investigation. It's a real one. Jasmine moved forward next. And we're not just looking at individual actors. We're examining the systems that allowed this to happen. Training programs, promotion criteria, performance metrics, everything that might have incentivized discriminatory behavior. Marcus added, we're also reaching out to former employees who left under questionable circumstances. If you worked at Luminaire and experienced or witnessed discrimination, we want to hear from you. Your stories matter. The questions came faster now, overlapping, aggressive. A reporter from Fox Business. Isn't this just performative? 3 people can't investigate an entire company. Elena fielded that one. They're not working alone. We're bringing in external consultants, civil rights experts, and employee advocacy groups. This investigation will have the resources and authority it needs. From the back, a voice cut through. What about David Winters? The room went quiet. Elena's eyes found the reporter who'd asked, a woman from the Los Angeles Times. David Winters, your Western Regional Director, the reporter continued. He sent emails explicitly telling staff to prioritize high-potential customers and optimize floor time. Those are in the documentation that's been leaked. Is he still employed? Elena's jaw tightened. She hadn't known about the leaks, but she wasn't surprised. In the digital age, secrets had the half-life of ice in summer. As of this moment, David Winters is suspended pending investigation, Elena said. If the allegations are substantiated, he will be terminated. Richard's head snapped up, alarm crossing his features. David Winters had been with the company for 7 years, had overseen massive growth in the Western region, had relationships with half the board. Suspending him would send shockwaves through the organization. But Elena had drawn her line. Another question from a local news station. What do you say to customers who feel betrayed, who loved Luminaire and now feel like they can't trust you? Elena's expression softened. I say you're right to feel betrayed. We betrayed your trust. We took your loyalty and your belief in what we stood for, and we violated it. I can't undo that. All I can do is promise to earn your trust back, one honest action at a time. And if that's not enough, I understand. A young reporter, probably early 20s, raised his hand tentatively. Do you think you deserve forgiveness? The question caught Elena off guard with its directness. She paused, considering. No, she said finally. I don't think I deserve forgiveness. I think I need to deserve it eventually, through sustained action and genuine change. But forgiveness isn't something you can demand or expect. It's something other people give when they're ready, if they're ready. All I can control is whether I do the work to become worthy of it. Patricia placed a hand on Elena's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by the cameras. The questions continued for another 20 minutes, ranging from financial projections to legal strategies to personal accountability. Elena answered each one with the same unflinching honesty, refusing to deflect or spin. Beside her, Patricia, Jasmine, and Marcus added details, provided context, and reinforced the seriousness of the investigation. Finally, Claire stepped forward, signaling that time was up. But before Elena could step away from the podium, a voice called out from the back. Ms. Cross, one more question. Elena looked up to see an older black woman standing, holding a small recorder. Her press badge identified her as representing a community newspaper from South Los Angeles. Yes? Elena said. The woman's voice carried the weight of lived experience. I'm Ruth Williams. I've been reporting on this community for 40 years. I've seen plenty of companies make promises after they get caught doing wrong. Usually, those promises last about as long as the news cycle. Why should we believe you're any different? The room fell silent, waiting. Elena met Ruth Williams's eyes across the crowded lobby. You shouldn't. Not based on my words today. You should believe me when I show up in your neighborhood, in your community, and prove through action that I mean what I say. You should believe me when the investigation finds ugly truths and I publish them anyway. You should believe me when employees tell you their experiences have actually changed. Words are easy, Ms. Williams. I'm asking you to judge me by what's hard. Ruth Williams held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll be watching. I hope you will, Elena said. She stepped back from the podium as Claire called an end to the press conference. The room erupted into a cacophony of follow-up questions and shouted inquiries, but Elena had said what needed saying. She walked through the crowd with Patricia, Jasmine, and Marcus flanking her, cameras tracking their movement until they disappeared through the doorway. In the hallway, Elena's legs nearly gave out. The adrenaline that had carried her through the conference drained away, leaving her shaking. Richard was there immediately, steadying her. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most reckless, he said, his voice tight. Maybe both, Elena managed. Patricia handed her a bottle of water. You did well. You didn't minimize, didn't make excuses, didn't hide behind corporate speak. Jasmine nodded. The hard part starts now, living up to what you just promised. Marcus checked his phone, his eyes widening. It's already everywhere. Every major news outlet, social media is exploding. Some people are praising you for the honesty. Others are saying it's too little too late, and a lot are just waiting to see if you follow through. Elena took a long drink of water, trying to steady herself. Let them wait. We'll show them. Richard's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. It's the board chair. They're calling an emergency meeting. When? Elena asked. Now. They want you on the line in 5 minutes. Elena closed her eyes briefly. She'd known this was coming. The board of directors, fiduciaries bound to protect shareholder value, would be in full panic mode after what she'd just done. Tell them I'll call in 10 minutes, Elena said. I need a moment. Richard hesitated, then nodded and stepped away to relay the message. Patricia studied Elena with concern. Are they going to try to remove you? They might try, Elena admitted. I own 42% of the company, so they'd need to prove cause. But after what I just admitted publicly, they might have grounds to argue I've damaged shareholder value through gross negligence. Jasmine's eyes flashed with anger. After you just took responsibility and promised to fix it? That's business, Elena said wearily. The board cares about profits and stock prices. I just told the world we've been systematically discriminating against customers, which could lead to lawsuits, boycotts, and revenue loss. From their perspective, I just set the company on fire. Marcus frowned. So what do you do? Elena straightened, some of her strength returning. I remind them that Luminaire was built on values, not just profits. And if they can't support that, then maybe they shouldn't be on the board. Patricia's smile was fierce. Now that sounds like the woman who founded this company, Richard returned, his expression grim. They're waiting. And Elena? They sound angry. Elena walked to an empty conference room, leaving the others in the hallway. She dialed into the emergency board meeting, her phone on speaker, and was immediately met with a chorus of furious voices. Elena, what the hell were you thinking? This was Thomas Brennan, the board chair, his voice sharp with accusation. I was thinking about doing the right thing, Elena said calmly. The right thing? You just admitted to systematic discrimination on national television. Do you have any idea what this does to our liability exposure? I have a pretty good idea, yes. Another voice joined in, Margaret Carlson, representative of one of their largest institutional investors. The stock is in free fall. We've already lost hundreds of millions in market cap. Our legal team is preparing for a potential avalanche of lawsuits. You've potentially destroyed shareholder value. Elena kept her voice level. And if we'd tried to cover it up, minimize it, or spin it, we'd have destroyed something more important than shareholder value. We'd have destroyed any remaining integrity this company has. Integrity doesn't pay dividends, Thomas snapped. No, Elena agreed. But it's the foundation everything else is built on. Without it, we're just another luxury brand selling expensive things to people we secretly hold in contempt. Is that what you want Luminaire to be? Silence fell on the line, but it was the silence of anger, not consideration. Margaret spoke again, her tone colder now. Elena, we need to discuss your position as CEO. Given what you've admitted and the financial damage you've caused, the board is considering whether you're still the right person to lead this company. There it was. The threat she'd known was coming. Let me make this simple for you, Elena said, her voice hardening. I own 42% of this company. I founded it. I built it from nothing. And yes, I also let it drift away from its values while I was focused on growth. That's on me, and I'm taking responsibility for it. She paused, letting her words land. But if you think the solution is to remove me and replace me with someone who'll prioritize stock price over doing the right thing, then you fundamentally misunderstand what Luminaire is supposed to be. I'm not stepping down. I'm not backing away from the investigation. And I'm not compromising on the changes we need to make. Thomas's voice was ice. Then you're forcing us to consider more drastic action. You mean trying to remove me for cause, Elena said. Go ahead and try. But ask yourselves this. What does it look like when a board removes a black female CEO for taking responsibility for discrimination? How do you think that plays in the media you're so worried about? The silence this time was different. Calculation. Elena pressed her advantage. Here's what I'm proposing instead. Give me 6 months. Let the investigation proceed. Let the reforms take root. If after 6 months the company is worse off, if we haven't made real progress, if the financial damage is catastrophic, then we can revisit leadership. But give the work a chance before you abandon it. Margaret's voice came through, thoughtful now. 6 months is a long time in the market. 6 months is nothing in the work of cultural transformation, Elena countered. But I'll make you a deal. I'll provide monthly reports to the board on investigation findings, financial impacts, and reform progress. Full transparency. You'll know exactly what's happening and you can make informed decisions. Another board member spoke, Daniel Ortiz, who'd been quiet until now. And if customers boycott, if revenue collapses, then we'll know the truth about whether our customer base values integrity or just wants luxury without conscience, Elena said. But I don't think that's what will happen. I think people are hungry for companies that actually stand for something. And I think Luminaire can be that company again, if we have the courage to do the hard work. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, heated and tense, with various board members expressing concerns, demanding assurances, and questioning every aspect of Elena's plan. But slowly, grudgingly, they began to accept that removing her immediately would create more problems than it solved. Finally, Thomas spoke with weary resignation. 6 months, Elena. We'll give you 6 months. But we want those monthly reports, and if this goes sideways, we won't hesitate to act. Understood, Elena said. The call ended, leaving Elena alone in the conference room with silence and the weight of what she'd just committed to. 6 months to transform a company, to root out systemic bias, to rebuild trust, to prove that values could coexist with viability. 6 months to save everything, or watch it all burn down. She returned to the hallway where the others waited. Richard looked up anxiously. "Well?" he asked. 6 months, Elena said. "They're giving us 6 months to show progress." Patricia nodded slowly. "That's not much time." "No," Elena agreed. "It's not. Which means we start now." Jasmine pulled out her tablet. "I've already started mapping out the investigation timeline. We need to prioritize locations based on complaint data, employee turnover, and demographic patterns." Marcus added, "And we need to start reaching out to former employees immediately. The longer we wait, the harder it becomes to get accurate information." Richard began making notes. "I'll coordinate with legal to establish the proper frameworks for the investigation and ensure we have the resources allocated." Elena watched them, these people who hours ago had been strangers and adversaries, now working together towards something that felt impossibly large and desperately necessary. "Thank you," she said quietly, "all of you, for believing this matters enough to fight for it." Patricia met her eyes. "Don't thank us yet. We're just getting started." "And Elena, this is going to get worse before it gets better. The investigation will find things that hurt. People you trust will turn out to be part of the problem. There will be days when you'll wonder if it's worth it." "I know," Elena said. "But on those days," Patricia continued, "remember why we're doing this. Remember the customers who were turned away. Remember the employees who were silenced. Remember that somewhere out there, there's another person walking into a Luminaire store, and we're fighting to make sure they're treated with dignity." Elena felt something settle in her chest, something solid and unshakable. Purpose, direction, the clarity that comes from finally aligning actions with values. "Then let's get to work," she said. They moved as a unit back toward the executive offices, already discussing strategies, timelines, and approaches. Behind them, the lobby was clearing out, journalists filing their stories, cameras being packed away, the physical evidence of the press conference disappearing even as the digital evidence spread across the internet at the speed of light. Somewhere in that digital conversation, opinions were forming. Some people were calling Elena brave, others were calling her calculating. Some believed in the promised transformation, others were certain it was performative. The narrative was being written in real time by thousands of voices, none of whom could know what would happen next. But Elena knew one thing with certainty. Whatever happened next, it would be real. Messy, painful, uncertain, but real. And after years of polished facades and comfortable lies, real was exactly what Luminaire needed. Even if the truth destroyed everything she'd built, at least the destruction would be honest. And from honest destruction, something true could finally grow. 3 months into the investigation, Elena stood in what had become the war room, a converted conference space on the corporate building's 28th floor, its walls now covered with charts, timelines, and documentation that mapped the scope of Luminaire's failures in excruciating detail. Patricia was at the whiteboard, marking another location in red. Houston. That made 11 stores with documented patterns of discrimination, nearly a third of their total locations. The Dallas assistant manager has been coaching employees on how to use coded language, Patricia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Words like sophisticated clientele and discerning buyers as proxies for wealthy and white. Jasmine looked up from her laptop, her expression grim. And I've got testimony from 4 former Miami employees describing a quota system. Managers were tracking the racial demographics of customers each associate helped, and if you spent too much time with Black or Latino customers, you got flagged in performance reviews. Marcus set down a folder thick with printouts. The Chicago location is worse. They were actively steering customers of color toward a separate urban collection with lower price points and different styling. Separate but equal, jewelry edition. Elena felt the familiar weight settle over her chest, the one that had become constant since the investigation began. Every revelation was another brick in a wall of shame she'd have to carry forever. How many employees were involved in Chicago? 6 that we can confirm, including the store manager, Marcus said. But the practice was so normalized that people didn't even recognize it as discrimination. They thought they were being helpful, catering to different tastes. Racism wearing a customer service smile, Patricia said bitterly. Richard entered carrying coffee for everyone, his own exhaustion evident in the shadows under his eyes. Over the past 3 months, he'd become an unlikely convert to the cause, his initial resistance transforming into fierce dedication once he'd seen the depth of the problem. The board wants an update on the financial impact. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. What are the numbers? Revenue is down 18% across all locations. Stock price has dropped 23% from pre-scandal levels. We've had 12 lawsuits filed by former employees and customers. Richard paused, then added, but there's something else. Applications for employment have tripled. People want to work for a company that's actually trying to fix its problems. Jasmine's eyebrows rose. Tripled? Apparently honesty has market value, Richard said with a tired smile. Who knew? Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Claire. The reporter from the LA Times is here for the scheduled interview. She brought Ruth Williams with her. Elena's pulse quickened. Ruth Williams, the community journalist who'd challenged her at the press conference, had been true to her word. She'd been watching, reporting, fact-checking every claim Elena made. Her articles had been scrupulously fair but unsparing, documenting both progress and setbacks with equal attention. Give me 10 minutes, Elena typed back. She turned to the team. We're releasing the interim findings tomorrow. Are we ready? Patricia walked to the wall where they'd organized the documentation by category. Hiring discrimination, customer profiling, retaliation against whistleblowers, failure of leadership oversight. As ready as we'll ever be. This is going to hurt. It should hurt, Elena said quietly. What we did hurt people. The least we can do is feel the weight of it. She left them to prepare for the interview, taking the elevator down to a smaller conference room where Ruth Williams sat beside a younger woman with a recorder. Both stood as Elena entered. Ms. Cross, the younger woman said, extending her hand. I'm Sarah Chen from the LA Times. Thank you for agreeing to this follow-up interview. Elena shook both their hands, noting how Ruth Williams's grip was firm and assessing. Thank you for continuing to cover the story. A lot of outlets moved on after the initial press conference. Ruth's expression was unreadable. A lot of companies count on that. Make a big show of accountability, wait for the cameras to leave, then go back to business as usual. Are you one of those companies, Ms. Cross? The directness was refreshing after months of carefully worded corporate communications. I hope not, Elena said, gesturing for them to sit. But I guess you're here to find out. Sarah activated her recorder. Let's start with the basics. Tomorrow you're releasing the interim investigation findings. Can you give us a preview? Elena had rehearsed various versions of this answer, but sitting across from Ruth Williams, she abandoned the script. We found systematic discrimination at 11 of our 32 locations. We found evidence of profiling, biased customer service, retaliation against employees who complained, and management practices that incentivized excluding certain customers. We found that people were hurt, careers were damaged, and dignity was violated regularly. Ruth leaned forward. How high up did the problem go? All the way to my office, Elena said. Not because I explicitly ordered discrimination, but because I created systems that rewarded results without adequately monitoring how those results were achieved. I promoted managers based on sales numbers without investigating whether those numbers came at the cost of our values. Sarah made notes. You've terminated how many employees as a result of the investigation? 23, including 5 store managers, 2 regional directors, and 3 corporate executives. Elena's voice remained steady, though each number felt like removing a piece of foundation from a building that was already unstable. Including David Winters, who'd been with the company for 7 years, Ruth noted. Yes, David's emails showed he actively encouraged practices that led to discrimination. He had to go. Ruth's expression didn't soften. And what about the people who stayed quiet? The ones who saw what was happening and didn't report it? This was the harder question, the one that had kept Elena up at night. We're dealing with that through mandatory retraining, closer oversight, and a probationary period. Some people were complicit through silence, but silence came from a culture where speaking up was punished. We're trying to break that cycle. That sounds like making excuses for cowardice, Ruth said bluntly. Elena met her eyes. Maybe it is. But if I fire everyone who stayed silent, I'd have to start with myself. I saw warning signs for years: higher turnover among employees of color, customer complaints that mentioned feeling unwelcome. And I told myself they were isolated incidents. I stayed silent to myself about what was really happening. The admission hung in the air between them. Sarah asked, "What's changed structurally? Beyond firing people and retraining, what's actually different?" Elena had been waiting for this question. We've eliminated performance metrics that rewarded speed over service quality. We've implemented secret shopper programs specifically designed to test for bias, sending in diverse customers and tracking how they're treated. We've established an independent ethics hotline managed by an outside firm, so employees can report concerns without fear of retaliation. And you've hired Patricia Morales, Jasmine Chen, and Marcus Williams to lead the transformation, Ruth said. How's that working out? They're the best decision I've made in the last 3 years, Elena said without hesitation. They understand what went wrong because they lived through it. They don't let me or anyone else off the hook, and they're trusted by employees in a way I'm not. Ruth studied her for a long moment. You know, people think this is all performance, right? That you're doing the minimum to save your reputation, and once the heat dies down, you'll quietly roll back the reforms. I know, Elena said. And I can't control what people think. All I can control is what I do, so I'm going to keep doing the work, keep being transparent, keep holding people accountable, and eventually either people will believe me or they won't. Sarah glanced at Ruth, who gave a small nod, then asked, "What about the customers who were discriminated against? Are you reaching out to them?" We've contacted every customer who filed a complaint in the past 3 years, offering apologies and compensation. We're also running ads in community newspapers inviting anyone who experienced discrimination to come forward. It's an open process. How many have come forward? Ruth asked. 87 so far, and I'm meeting with as many of them as I can personally. Ruth's eyebrows rose slightly. Personally? Yes. If they're willing to meet with me, I want to hear their stories directly, not filtered through HR or legal. I want to understand what we did and who we hurt. Sarah leaned back, processing this. That's unusual for a CEO. Maybe it shouldn't be, Elena said. The interview continued for another 40 minutes, covering financial impacts, board relationships, and long-term strategy. But it was Ruth's final question that cut deepest. Ms. Cross, 3 months ago you said we should judge you by actions, not words. So I'm asking, what have you actually learned from this experience? Elena considered carefully before answering. I've learned that good intentions are worthless without good systems. I've learned that you can't delegate values the way you delegate tasks. You have to embody them constantly or they disappear. I've learned that silence in the face of injustice is its own form of participation. And I've learned that rebuilding trust is infinitely harder than building it in the first place. She paused, then added, but most importantly, I've learned that I was wrong about what luxury means. I thought luxury was about exclusivity, about creating an experience that felt special and rare. But real luxury is being treated with dignity. It's walking into a space and knowing you belong there. That's what we took from people, and that's what we're trying to give back. Ruth Williams didn't smile, but something in her expression shifted. We'll see, she said, standing. I'll be back in 3 months to check your progress. I hope you will, Elena said. After they left, Elena returned to the war room. The team was deep in preparation for tomorrow's report release, cross-referencing data, preparing presentation materials, anticipating questions. She watched them work for a moment, these unlikely allies who'd become the conscience of her company. Claire appeared in the doorway. Elena, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. His name is Marcus Rodriguez. Elena's heart jumped. The man with the delivery uniform, the one she'd helped get a watch for his father. Send him up. 5 minutes later, Marcus Rodriguez entered, looking uncomfortable in the corporate setting but determined. He carried a small box. Mr. Rodriguez, Elena said warmly, standing to greet him. It's good to see you. How is your father? Marcus's face lit up. That's why I'm here. He retired last week. I gave him the watch at his party, and Ms. Cross, when I told him the story about how you stood up for me, about what you did, he cried. My dad doesn't cry, but he did. Elena felt her own eyes prickling. I'm so glad the watch meant something to him. It meant everything, Marcus said. But that's not the only reason I came. I've been following the news, reading about what you're doing with the investigation and the changes, and I wanted you to have this. He handed her the box. Inside was a simple bracelet made of woven leather and silver, clearly handmade. My dad made it. He does metalwork as a hobby. He wanted you to have something to remind you that what you did that day mattered, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. Elena's throat tightened as she examined the bracelet. The craftsmanship was beautiful, each silver thread woven with obvious care. This is incredible. Please thank your father for me. You can thank him yourself if you want, Marcus said. He wanted me to invite you to dinner. At our house, just family, nothing fancy. He wants to meet the woman who saw his son as a person worth defending. The invitation nearly undid her. After months of board meetings and legal consultations and damage control, the simple humanity of a family dinner felt like water in a desert. I would be honored, Elena said. After Marcus left, she returned to find Patricia watching her from the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. What? Elena asked. That's why we're doing this, Patricia said simply. Not for the press conferences or the investigations or even the financial recovery. For moments like that, for people like Marcus Rodriguez and his father. Elena nodded, slipping the bracelet onto her wrist. Tomorrow's going to be brutal, isn't it? Probably, Patricia agreed, but we'll get through it. The next morning, Elena stood once again at a podium facing cameras and reporters, but this time the atmosphere was different. Less circus, more courtroom. The interim findings were released simultaneously with her statement, a 100-page document detailing failures in excruciating specificity. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She presented the data on customer complaints, the patterns of discrimination, the documented cases of retaliation. She named the stores with the worst records. She identified the systemic failures in training, oversight, and accountability. She showed the financial cost of the discrimination, both in lost customers and legal settlements. And she announced the consequences: 23 terminations, complete restructuring of regional management, mandatory retraining for all employees, implementation of new monitoring systems, and a commitment to quarterly transparency reports. The questions came hard and fast, but Elena had learned something in the past 3 months. She'd learned that honesty, while painful, was ultimately simpler than deception. She didn't have to remember what she'd said in previous interviews or worry about contradicting herself. She just had to tell the truth. A reporter from Forbes asked about the financial impact. Your revenue is down 18%. How long can you sustain this? As long as it takes, Elena said. We have reserves. We're cutting executive compensation before we cut staff, and we're betting that doing the right thing will eventually attract customers who value integrity. A business analyst from CNBC, but the market is punishing you. Your stock is down significantly. Aren't you effectively destroying shareholder value? Elena's response was measured but firm. I'm betting that shareholder value built on discrimination isn't real value. It's a bubble waiting to burst. We're deflating that bubble intentionally and building something more sustainable. Then came a question from an unexpected source. A young black woman stood up in the back, her press badge identifying her as representing a diversity in business publication. Ms. Cross, I'm Alicia James. My mother applied for a job at your Seattle location 3 years ago. She was more than qualified, but she was told the position had been filled. 2 weeks later, they hired a white woman with less experience. Elena's chest tightened. I'm so sorry that happened to your mother. My question, Alicia continued, her voice steady but charged with emotion, is what you're doing to address hiring discrimination, not just customer service discrimination. It was a fair question, one that cut to a part of the problem they were still working to address. Jasmine stepped up to the microphone. That's my area of focus. We found evidence of biased hiring practices at 7 locations. We're implementing blind resume reviews, diverse hiring panels, and standardized interview questions. We're also auditing promotion decisions to identify patterns of bias. Alicia pressed further. And what about your mother specifically? What happens to the people who were passed over? Elena made a decision in that moment, one that wasn't in any prepared talking points. Give me your mother's information. If she's still interested in working for Luminaire, I want to make it right." Alicia's expression shifted from challenge to surprise. "Seriously?" "Completely seriously. We can't undo the past, but we can offer opportunities now." After the press conference, Elena found herself in her office with Richard, both of them exhausted but oddly energized. "The board called," Richard said. "They're cautiously optimistic. The transparency is generating positive coverage in some outlets, and there's talk of Luminaire becoming a case study in corporate accountability." "That's something," Elena said. "There's more. Connor, the manager you promoted at the downtown location, his store has the highest customer satisfaction scores in the company. People are specifically choosing to shop there because of the culture he's built." Elena felt a spark of hope. "What's he doing differently?" "He's hired a diverse staff, trained them on empathy and active listening, and created an environment where every customer is treated like they matter." "Revolutionary stuff," Richard said with gentle irony. Elena smiled. "Maybe we should have tried that 15 years ago." Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter. "Mom, I showed my social justice class your press conference. My professor wants to interview you for her research on corporate transformation. I'm proud of you." The words hit harder than any positive press coverage could have. Over the next 2 months, the transformation continued in fits and starts. Some stores embraced the changes enthusiastically. Others resisted, clinging to old habits and resentments. 3 more managers were terminated. 2 locations saw complete staff turnovers. The financial numbers remained challenging, though there were signs of stabilization. But something else was happening, something harder to quantify. Customers started sharing stories on social media about positive experiences at Luminaire stores. Employees began speaking up when they saw problems, trusting that the reporting system would protect rather than punish them. The quality of job applicants improved as people who valued the mission sought to be part of the rebuilding, and slowly, painfully, the culture began to shift. 6 months after the Beverly Hills incident, Elena returned to that flagship store for the first time since the confrontation. The space looked the same displays, same lighting, same luxury aesthetic, but the atmosphere was different. The new manager, a Latina woman named Sofia Reyes, who'd transferred from the Chicago location, greeted her warmly. "Ms. Cross, welcome back." Elena walked through the showroom, watching the interactions. A young black couple was examining engagement rings, and the sales associate helping them, a white woman in her 40s, was patient, enthusiastic, showing them pieces from across the price spectrum without judgment. An elderly Asian man was being fitted for a custom watch, treated with the deference anyone spending serious money deserved. A teenage girl browsing with her mother was given the same attention as a wealthy-looking older woman nearby. This was what Luminaire was supposed to be. Elena paused at the same display case where she'd stood 6 months ago, the one with the slightly crooked sign. It was straight now. Someone had fixed it, but more than that, someone had been empowered to notice details and care about them. Marcus, the original Marcus from Beverly Hills, had been rehired and was now working as an assistant manager. He approached with a genuine smile. "Ms. Cross, it's different now," he said quietly. "It actually feels like the company you described when I first interviewed here." "I'm glad," Elena said, "and I'm sorry it took what it took to get here." "So am I," Marcus said, "but we're here now. That counts for something." That evening, Elena attended dinner at the Rodriguez home. It was a small house in East LA, warm and filled with the smell of home cooking. Marcus's father, Roberto, greeted her at the door wearing the watch, his handshake firm and his eyes kind. "Miss Cross, thank you for coming," he said. "Please come in. Your family here." The dinner was simple and perfect. Carne asada, rice, beans, homemade tortillas, and conversation that ranged from Roberto's bus routes to Elena's plans for Luminaire to Marcus's hopes for the future. No one treated Elena like a CEO. They treated her like a person who'd done a decent thing and was trying to keep doing decent things. As Roberto walked her to her car later that night, he stopped and looked at her seriously. "You know what you did for my son. It wasn't just about a watch." "I know," Elena said. "You saw him," Roberto continued, "really saw him, not as a delivery driver or a number or someone to dismiss, as a person with dignity who deserved respect. That's what we all want, Miss Cross. Just to be seen. Elena felt tears threatening. I'm trying to make sure everyone gets that at Luminaire. I know you are, Roberto said. That's why we invited you here. To remind you that the work matters. Even when it's hard, even when people doubt you, it matters. The following week, Ruth Williams published her 6-month follow-up article. It was thorough, critical, where criticism was warranted, but ultimately concluded, Luminaire's transformation is imperfect, incomplete, and ongoing, but it appears to be real. In an era of performative corporate virtue, Elena Cross has done something rare. She's actually trying to fix what she broke, even when the cost is steep. The board meeting that followed was tense but ultimately supportive. The financial numbers were still challenging, but trending upward. Customer complaints were down 60%. Employee satisfaction was up. Applications for positions had quadrupled. Thomas Brennan, the board chair who'd threatened to remove Elena 6 months earlier, spoke with grudging respect. You've done what you said you'd do. It's cost us, but you've done it. We're not finished, Elena said. This is ongoing work. We understand that now, Margaret Carlson added, and we're willing to support it, because apparently integrity does have market value. Who knew? Elena smiled, recognizing Richard's words from months ago. A year after walking into the Beverly Hills store and being threatened with removal, Elena stood at the opening of Luminaire's newest location in Oakland. It was deliberately placed in a diverse neighborhood, with a diverse staff, and a mandate to serve everyone with equal dignity. Patricia, Jasmine, and Marcus stood with her, along with Connor from downtown, Sophia from Beverly Hills, and a dozen other employees who'd embraced the transformation. The ribbon cutting drew local media, community leaders, and customers eager to see what the reformed Luminaire looked like. Elena's speech was brief. A year ago, I learned a painful lesson about the difference between what I thought my company was and what it had become. I learned that values require constant vigilance, that good intentions mean nothing without good systems, and that luxury is not about exclusivity, it's about dignity. She looked at the faces in the crowd, seeing diversity, hope, and cautious optimism. This store represents a promise renewed, that everyone who walks through these doors will be treated with respect, that the jewelry we sell will be beautiful and ethical, that the people who work here will be empowered to speak up when something's wrong, and that we will never ever forget that our purpose is to honor the important moments in people's lives, not to judge who deserves those moments. The crowd applauded. The ribbon was cut. The doors opened. And as customers streamed in, young and old, wealthy and saving, from every background and neighborhood, Elena watched with a mixture of pride and humility. This wasn't the end of the work. It was barely the beginning. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when the old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But she'd built something she could finally stand behind again. That evening, Elena sat in her office, the city lights spreading below her window like scattered diamonds. On her desk were 2 objects, the leather and silver bracelet Roberto Rodriguez had made, which she wore every day now, and a framed photo from the Oakland opening showing the diverse group of employees who'd made the transformation possible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alicia James, the reporter whose mother had been passed over for a job. My mom started at the Seattle location today. She called me crying happy tears. Thank you for meaning what you said. Elena typed back. Thank your mother for giving us another chance. I hope we earn it every day. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city where Luminaire stores dotted the landscape. In each one, people were making choices about how to treat the customers who walked in. Some were making the right choices because they believed in dignity. Others because they knew they'd be held accountable if they didn't. But either way, the culture was different now. Not perfect, not finished, but different. Elena thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, so focused on growth and competition that she'd lost sight of the foundation everything was built on. She thought about Diane Mercer and David Winters and all the others who'd participated in creating a culture of discrimination. She thought about Patricia and Jasmine and Marcus and all the people who'd been hurt but had chosen to help rebuild anyway. And she thought about the customers who'd been made to feel small, who'd been turned away or dismissed or treated as less than, and the work that remained to make amends. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light. You saw him, really saw him. That's what we all want, just to be seen. Roberto's words had become Elena's North Star. Seeing people, really seeing them, not as demographics or price points or risk assessments, but as human beings deserving of dignity. It was such a simple thing, and it had required burning down everything she'd built to remember it. But standing in her office with the city lights below and the weight of a year's transformation behind her, Elena understood something crucial. The company she had now, imperfect and struggling and rebuilding, was more valuable than the company she'd lost. Because it was built on truth instead of image, on accountability instead of excuses, on the radical idea that luxury meant treating everyone like they mattered. She'd walked into her own store and been told she didn't belong. Now, a year later, she'd rebuilt a company where everyone belonged. The work would continue. The challenges would persist. But the foundation was solid now, built on principles that wouldn't erode as long as she remained vigilant. Elena Cross, founder and CEO of Luminaire, had learned the hardest way possible that the true measure of leadership isn't building something impressive. It's having the courage to break what you've built when it betrays your values, and the humility to rebuild it right. She turned from the window, picked up her phone, and texted the team, "Thank you for helping me save what mattered. See you tomorrow. More work ahead." The responses came quickly, each one a commitment to keep going. Outside, the city continued its endless movement. Inside, a woman who'd been humiliated in her own store had transformed that humiliation into purpose. And somewhere, in a Luminaire store she'd probably never visit, a customer walked in uncertain and walked out feeling seen. That was luxury. That was worth building. That was enough.